This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Welcome everybody once again to the Party Loaded podcast. It is Wednesday evening. It's time for the show. It's time for fun. It's time for games. It's time for everything great in that world of video games. It is the 24th of July, episode 187. And back like a phoenix from the ashes, we have joining me, Luke Retallick. Tonight we have Mr. Adrian Chia. Welcome back. Hey, Adrian.
Hello, fertile listeners.
Hi, Adrian.
Did you say fertile listeners?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my blessing upon
weird.
thee.
There was a pregnant pause there, I'm sure. Oh, man. Yeah, so you're feeling good tonight? You shook off the bugs? I don't know what was going on last week. You weren't feeling great, but...
plague. Let's just
Plague. Bubonic plague.
It's always plague. It's like when someone says they've got the flu. It's not actually influenza. It's like just a, extremified version of that common language, really.
Yeah, I need to stop sharing my food with rodents and then I should be fine.
Cool. Good to know. And back like ibises from the burning trash cans, we also have our game dad, Matt Dyatt, and Christian Paulson Brown. Welcome back, gents.
I'm just processing that. Were you calling me a bin chicken?
Bin chicken, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'll wear that. I'll wear that.
I'm just trying to be nice to Adrian because we did throw some mad shade at him last week, and I feel like I have to share the love around a little bit. So
yeah. By the way, I did listen to the I did listen to last week's podcast in between then and now. And I must say, screw you guys. And yeah, I'm going to be looking for opportunities to throw back some of that mad shade I received last week.
Nice, love you too, man.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, let's get stuck right in then. And speaking of shady stuff, Adrian, I believe that you have been on your roguelike binge again this week. What's going on?
So obviously having. It's mainly after coming down from playing all that Sekiro 2 weeks ago, and I like when you binge a good TV series or play like a really great narrative game. You stop playing it, and then you're left with this void in your soul that you need to fill with some other sort of form of entertainment. And my wandering eyes went back to my Steam library and had a look through what I could play, and I ended up playing like 5 different roguelites during like the last 2 weeks.
Jeez, that's a bit.
In an effort to find something that would stick. I started with Galaxy, which is like a... it's hard to explain, but it's like a spaceship, asteroids style roguelite where you pilot a little spaceship through asteroid fields and earn weapons and unlock more as you go, and then later you get to turn into a Gundam style robot. But it didn't really keep my attention. I remember loving it like a while ago, but it didn't really pull me in. And then I was going
to say, are all of these games ones that you've played before, or are there some
They are.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they are all the ones I've played before. But I've never completed, if you could say completed in air quotes, many of these roguelites. I've mainly just sort of dipped into them briefly. I spent quite a lot of time on Nuclear Throne, if anyone's played that, which is kind of a cross between Binding of Isaac and Enter the Gungeon. It's very much like Enter the Gungeon, but it's very, very fast and very, very frenetic. A lot of strong visual and audio sort of popping noises and very jarring. And I played that for several days, but it's super hard and I couldn't beat it. And in the end, had to move on because I was getting frustrated. So then I moved on to Dead Cells and sort of started again in Dead Cells because, like a lot of roguelites, if I get back into it, having not played it for a while, I feel a bit lost and a bit sort of disconnected from the game. So I tend to
That's got a stack of new content in it as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So I tend to if I play these kinds of games and then leave them and then come back later, I tend to delete my old save files and start again just to sort of promote that kind of collectathon style activity. And again, with Dead Cells, I'd never beaten the final boss before, or the second final boss, I guess you should say, because there is another final boss. And so I was like, yes, okay, cool, I found it. I'm getting in the groove. I played it for a few days and was really loving it. And then I beat that final boss, and a strange psychological phenomenon occurred, and I immediately didn't want to play it anymore. I was like, okay, so I'm kind of done with this now. Like, it was quite odd. But still searching, and then finally I settled on Enter the Gungeon, which is what I've been playing the most of and have spent the most amount of time on. And I do own Enter the Gungeon on the Switch, and I did play it a little bit on the Switch, but oh my god, playing it on the PC is so much better. Having the mouse and being able to aim way more accurately, it changes the game entirely. Like, I never really enjoyed it much on the Switch because you're often, I don't know, it's hard to be accurate, and the kind of flow of the game is much improved if you can be more accurate. And so, yeah, that's what I'm playing at the moment. And the content is staggering in that game. And the amount of guns and the amount of characters and the amount of unlockables is huge. One of the closest I've found to sort of Binding of Isaac in regards to its just sheer mass of unlockable content. So that has kept me very engaged because that's what I enjoy in my roguelites, is being able to unlock tons of stuff.
I played that the very first week it came out, and I reckon what you've probably got now is like way different to the stuff that I had in there content-wise.
It did have a major update recently called Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and they just added like 20 new guns and a bunch of new characters, and so it certainly was perfect timing, and I really, really enjoy it.
You know what I really want to play that game on? Because it was announced at E3 by Devolver Digital, is the arcade cabinet that they're bringing out for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I was going to own any arcade cabinet in my house, I think that might actually be the one I'd want to get.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, so that's kept me going. So I've been binging roguelites while binging It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and so I've worked my way through sort of 12 seasons of Always Sunny while playing roguelites, and they're now intertwined in my consciousness. So we'll see. When
the roguelike of sitcoms.
Yeah. When I look back on roguelites in 2 years, I'll probably only remember Always Sunny. But
yeah. Nice. Well, it's funny you mentioned the whole like playing Dead Cells and finally going back and sort of wiping your attitude towards wiping your progress when you start over and that kind of thing. Is I very nearly did that last week when I was jumping back into The Witcher. But after the troubles that I reported on then, I'm happy to say that I basically worked out that that messed up save file that I had, and I was able to retrieve it and jump back in. So I've now vacillated back again from Witcher 3 to Witcher 1 because I got it working.
Yay.
This is going to be the third time I've put down Witcher 3 and gone back to one of the earlier ones. So we'll see if I actually, get back to it at some point. But look, I mean, Witcher 1's still an arcade game, still, very clunky compared to modern ones, but I'm still enjoying it because the story is really, really good. And I'm in a very roleplay headspace at the moment because I've got a new D&D campaign sort of IRL starting up shortly with a whole bunch of names that long listeners to the show will recognize because our previous hosts are all playing in that campaign as well. So it's going to be good fun. So I'm very much in the space now where, like with our recent talk of Divinity 2 and Baldur's Gate and all that kind of stuff, I'm just hunting for like inspiration for, RPG content basically. So, which is, a distinct flavor of that, but it's giving me some good ideas story-wise of things to incorporate down the track. So any of my players that are listening to this don't get any clues. It's going to be way down the track stuff. Nothing immediate future. Yeah, it's still fun. Like I'm definitely not playing OG Witcher for the combat or for the graphics. I'm playing it for the story elements. That's pretty much the only thing I give a crap about. So yeah. So hopefully I'll be able to get through to the end this time. But the other thing that I've, besides Destiny 2, which I still suck about 15 hours into this week because goddamn that game. I've been playing a bit of Grand Theft Auto Online because the new casino update just went live yesterday. So there's a bit of history to this thing. Like there's this casino block in GTA Online that's been there pretty much since the inception of the game going online, like even before heists were a thing. And everybody thought that the casino was actually going to be built up and released as part of the heist content, but it never was. And so it's been sitting there the whole time. It's like almost been like the side of a big conspiracy theory in GTA Online as to why it hasn't actually turned into a piece of content. There's been a lot of conjecture about Rockstar having issues with putting elements of like real gambling references in the game with some of the other controversies that have happened in recent years. But they've finally done it. And look, I'd say I enjoy it. It's probably not as strong as their last content release, which was the nightclubs one. because running a nightclub, I think, is a good bit of content for GTA because it's an additional source of revenue from a different business type, as well as it introduced a whole bunch of new sort of techie things to the game, like a trailer, like on a car that you could bring around that was like a mobile sort of, workstation where you could have like different tech guns, and there was like a flying bike and stuff you could put in it. It was a whole thing. But the casino is very much exactly what it sounds like. You basically can go in there, you can, pay for memberships, you can get chips, you can play, standard kinds of casino games. There's like a prize wheel you can spin every day, which is a bit of fun, and, pick up some random cosmetics and, RP points, which is your experience equivalent in the game, and cash and that sort of thing. But then you can also buy yourself like a premier apartment in this casino, which gives you access to all the games and stuff within your own sort of suite, as opposed to having to go down to the main floor and muck in with the plebs. So yeah, it's fun. It's more of a what I would kind of consider within GTA Online a roleplay update, where it's kind of designed to sort of fulfill that fantasy of living in a casino and sort of playing those games, as opposed to something that mechanically alters the game too much. Because I definitely wouldn't consider the casino a source of income because it's way too unpredictable and still slightly favors the house. So, I mean, you can get lucky.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bank on saving up for your best cars and things by, playing the odds down there. But
that doesn't sound like a normal casino.
No, not at all. Yeah. The games are pretty limited, though. If there's one thing I'm a little disappointed about, it's the fact that they don't have a huge range of games. So they've got the pokie machines, they've got 3-card poker, they've got roulette, and they've got blackjack. And I think that's about it. I don't think I'm missing anything. So yeah, it's pretty limited. I would have liked a couple more things. I would have liked to see them have like Baccarat or something, or I don't know, maybe even Keno. There's way better games they could have added in, but yeah. So
actual poker games against other players would have been amazing.
Yeah, it's all against the house though. I agree. That's the thing that is offered in Red Dead Online. Like you can actually do that. I guess theoretically the other players can sit down and play blackjack at the same time as you. So you are playing multiplayer blackjack against the house, and there is a strategy obviously to what the other players are doing there. But it's not the same as like a head-to-head. I agree. I think that would have been a really cool feature. Yeah. But that's GTA Online. The Diamond Casino and Resort update is what it's called. And there's a bit of a narrative sort of adventure attached to it with some missions you can do. There's like there's this whole thing about a cartel that's involved with some of the casino owners trying to take over the business, and it's weird. It's a standard GTA weirdness, basically.
But the only way you can get to it is if you spend 1.5 million on getting the apartment.
Yeah, which actually you can do very easily because they've got a promotion running at the moment through Twitch Prime, where if you have a Twitch Prime membership and you link your account to your Rockstar Social Club account, you can actually get that apartment for free. So as part of your Prime membership.
Okay. Yeah. That's not so bad.
Yeah, so I think if you do that, it will unlock it because you only have to own the thing. You don't actually have to physically pay for it in-game. So that's an easy way to do it for anyone who's keen to jump in and play that content because, I mean, otherwise it's not that expensive in terms of GTA money because to actually like get a base level membership in the casino, it's like 500 in-game cash, like GTA dollars, and that's like nothing because we're up to the point in the game now where you're just dropping hundreds of thousands to millions on most of the content. So yeah.
Sounds crap. Sorry,
it's all to sell their shark cards. I'm right with you, Adrian.
Listening to that whole conversation, I was like, this sounds like the most boring shit I've ever heard.
It's definitely not for everybody.
I just to be fair, I think GTA is boring as shit already. Combine that with the fact that now you can go to a casino where there's 3 games. I'm like, fucking hell, the casino in Pokemon sounds more exciting than like going into I can't think of anything more boring than going into a virtual world and doing something more boring than playing the video game. That just sounds crap to me.
Sure. Yep. I get it. It's just one of those things. I mean, the real sort of life current time period setting isn't your really cup of tea either. So I think,
that's true.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, who's next?
Me. Speaking of not quite real life, but nearly real life settings, I've been playing Battlefield 5.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I'm honestly shocked by that. Cool.
Yeah, so that kind of came out of nowhere because I found myself, I guess, just craving a twitchier game after playing Original Sin 2. I don't know what it was that sparked me to go Battlefield 5, but I signed up to the Origin Premier, not the Premier Pro or whatever it is, like the basic one. And it's something like $5. I can't remember for how long, but it was included in that. So I didn't want to pay full price for it, but I just wanted to like try it out because I have actually played every single Battlefield game since 1942. I've played everyone. Actually, that's a lie. I didn't play Battlefield Hardline.
No. As we established last week, you were born in 2011, so that can't be true.
I played every Battlefield game except Battlefield Hardline. And Battlefield 5 is fine. It's good. It's graphically and it's amazing. It's super atmospheric, super like immersive. DICE's sound design has always been top notch. Like the immersion you get from the sound design alone is crazy good. The character models and the environments and the effects all look like astounding.
Because unlike Call of Duty, Battlefield's always been DICE, hasn't it? Like they don't sort of switch between studios each year, do they? Or am I
They
wrong
don't.
about that?
They don't switch between studios. No. I'm not sure if it's been DICE from the get go. I can't remember, or whether it changed hands at some point. But since it's gone to DICE, it's always been DICE. Okay. I think that might have been starting with Battlefield 3, but I could be wrong. But anyway, yeah. So it's the World War II setting game. If anyone can't recall, and it's good. It's fun. I've been playing the like rush mode a lot, which is where you have to like arm or defuse some objectives, and then if you blow up the objectives, then it kind of unlocks the next area on the map, and you go and you have to blow up some more. So it's kind of like a progression through multiple areas of the map. And the thing that has been bugging me the most about the game, though, is the UI and everything about the game except when I'm in a game is terrible. So like all the menus and all of the like, it's got two forms of currency, which already puts me off. I don't know how to describe it, but
is it Anthem bad?
I didn't play Anthem much, but it feels Anthem bad. Especially what made me think of Anthem actually was the fact that I open up a menu and I have to see a loading icon for my menu before it pops in.
Oh, fuck that. Yeah,
gross. That just pisses me off. Like I just want to like customize my character, but instead I have to like go three menus in. Each menu has a loading icon. Like there's no excuse. Anytime I press a menu button, I should be straight into it in a split second. I don't want to have to wait for menus to load. That's ridiculous. And the way things unlock in the game, I still can't figure out. I still can't wrap my head around how the progression works. I know your character, each Battlefield role has its own level. So like sniper or medic or engineer, and then every gun has its own level, and then every item has its own level. Then you've also got like daily orders, weekly orders. There's like this battle pass kind of system where there's these objectives that are in like a progression that you have to unlock one after the other, and then there's like a skin at the end. And then when but I don't know, you have to buy some unlocks with the two currency. So some things you get just from grinding XP, but some things you have to spend the game currencies on. Some things you have to spend both game currencies on. I don't even know how to get one of the other game currencies. Like I think you have to pay for it. It's just a mess of unlocks, and they try and make it flashy. Where every time you finish a match, there's like 100 different things on the screen that all 100 different bars all fill up, and it just like has one after the other. Oh, you've got level 2 in this thing, level 5 in this thing. Oh, you got 500 XP in this thing, and it tries to make it seem exciting, like you're always accomplishing something, but I have no idea what any of it's doing. It's all just a mess, basically.
Numbers go up.
Numbers go up, and I'm supposed to feel good about that, but I just feel confused.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the UI thing. Are you playing on console or PC?
Playing on PC.
That's shit.
Console. Fucking
yeah,
hell.
I'm playing on PC, and I'm playing on Ultra. I'm getting like 90 frames a second, but the menus are taking ages to load. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Because like Destiny 2 on console, like you do have a bit of a load to actually open the menu up, but the moment the menu loads, you get access to everything. Like it's not loading every time you swap between screens. Like it loads in all of that stuff. It can just take a while.
Yeah.
But hearing that's on PC, like that is really shit.
I'll take like a quick little journey on how to acquire one unlock in the game. So I finish a match, then a bar fills up saying you've unlocked this item. You have to then go back to the main menu, go to something called the armory, watch the bar fill up again, click on the item in the armory, and then it unlocks for your character. And then you have to go back to the main menu, back to the your company menu, which has all your soldiers in it, and then go like select the soldier, select the weapon, and then select replace weapon, and then you can like equip the new thing you unlocked. And like it just takes so many steps just to like equip the new thing. And then what's super frustrating is that if you're too fast, the menus don't catch up with you. So if I click to unlock the item and then quickly go back and then go straight to the your company thing, the game hasn't like added it to my character yet because it's still like talking to the server and saying like, yep, let's update what's in your inventory. But I can get there quicker than the server gets there. It's
like walking your kids to school when you're late for work. You just want them to go faster, and they just won't because they've only got little legs, and you have to walk super slow to make sure that you don't leave them behind.
I am talking a lot about the UI, which isn't the game. Like the actual gameplay itself is good fun, but and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. But every time a match ends, it makes me groan. So
I have a solution, Christian. Not this podcast cycle, but the one before. I did briefly download Day of Defeat. And played a round of Dave Defeat.
Wow, that's old school.
We should just do that.
Maybe.
I think Matt and I have another potential solution too.
Is that Destiny?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say it's now Yestiny. So,
unlike Adrian, I actually really dig real world settings, and so I love like Battlefield, like World War II setting games and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
What are you talking about? The moon's real.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Wizards and shit there.
That's me.
Yep.
Oh, and I got Legend in Hearthstone again. Yay me.
Oh,
yay.
Is that number 4 or 5?
Nice job.
Maybe 5 now.
Nice.
Like that.
At the point where you just like, I lost count.
Yep. It was kind of accidental. I had a quest where I needed to play Murlocs to finish the quest, and then I just won every game as I was finishing that quest. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to see if I can make it to Legend with this deck, and I did. So
yeah. Nice.
Easy.
Murgling your way to Legend. That's the best way.
That's right.
Well, see, now I need to compare. I got my Moments of Triumph from Destiny 2, so I'm getting my shirt.
Hey,
nice.
It's the first time I'm ever actually getting a Destiny 2 shirt, in terms of like the Moments of Triumph shirt. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully it fits.
Yeah, it's American sizes. It will fit.
Yeah.
It'll probably arrive and then swim on me.
Yeah, it'll either be great or it'll be a 90.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, when I backed Psychonauts 2, I ordered like a 3XL shirt, and it is easily the biggest shirt I have.
Wow.
Like in Australia, that thing would be an 18XL.
Yep.
But yeah, so in terms of myself, I've been putting some more time in with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, and I am completely sold on that game now. I'm completely unsold on buying Sword or Shield because I have that game.
Mm-hmm.
And everything about it, I think I mentioned it before, like, it feels like the Pokemon that I want Pokemon to be, in that I can just have Pokemon following me around, and, you know, I can do cute things with them and everything like that, and capturing more Pokemon and such is kind of secondary to having cute friends that I'm going around the world and defeating other Pokemon masters with. But I will say that I'm still, every single time I play it, completely thrown off by the capture mechanics. Because you don't fight Pokemon to capture them in Pokemon Let's Go. You use basically what is the Pokemon Go mechanic of throwing a ball at a Pokemon.
Yep.
And it's dramatically different, and it makes the game feel strategically very different. And it takes a very long time for it to actually kind of build up in difficulty to the kind of difficulty I expect from a Pokemon game, having played the old ones. So that's been a kind of a weird learning experience. I will totally say that just throwing balls at Pokemon is way less interesting than actually having to think and strategize about how I'm going to capture them. So that's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah.
That's the only part about that game that I kind of dislike. But yeah, other than that, I streamed some Stellaris over the weekend.
Nice.
And started up a new game where I was playing some robots.
Oh, you got sick of your space nerds, did you? Or are these just another flavour of them?
No, so what happened with the Space Nerds was that I got bored. Not because the game was boring, but because the random generation that I'd been slapped into just wasn't that interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't run into anybody for a really long time. There was a whole bunch of empty space around me, which meant that I had lots of opportunities to just kind of expand out as much as I wanted. But when I finally ran into everyone, it was so late in the game, they had already made federations and everything like that. And so I was just kind of playing by myself, surrounded by 18-odd AI. And so I was like, I need to try something different. So I went and created some robots, started a new game, and it instantly got very, very interesting very fast. So what was supposed to be me just playing Stellaris for like 3 hours turned into like a 6-hour stream of me playing Stellaris.
Wow.
Because what ended up happening was I met my first neighbors who turned out to be right next door, like literally just one star system away. Not directly connected, but one star system away. And it turned out they were xenophobic militarists, so they immediately did not like me. And the moment I ran into them, all of their fleet power, like all their ships, were overwhelming compared to mine. So they were massively powerful, which meant that I immediately went into panic mode because I'm like, oh, these assholes are going to attack at any minute, and I need to be prepared. And yeah, so my very early game, Stellaris, was followed by my neighbors immediately attacking me, taking several of my star systems. I barely scraped back when they got into a fight with some of my other neighbors, and I took back some of my planets, so that when the war was ended, because the war exhaustion on both of our sides became too much, the only star systems I lost were ones that didn't have planets in them. But I immediately shrank down right at the start of the game. Like, I went from having a decently sized empire for that stage of the game to having a tiny empire, and plotting my revenge. So, because I was expecting just to be wiped out. Like, I'm like, this is over. They have overwhelming fleets. I can't beat them. But then I managed to survive. And the moment you can survive is the moment you can claw back. And so... my robots are super smart, so we start researching a whole bunch of technologies, and we overtook them. So their fleet power was still overwhelming compared to ours, because I wasn't getting the fleet strength up. But I had awesome guns. So there came a point where I was like, you know what, fuck these guys. And it turned out like they were apparently thinking the same thing, because they managed to declare war on me before I did on them. And then I just utterly wrecked their shit. And took back all of the star systems they stole from me, and just started absorbing their territories with my new friends elsewhere. So that was, oh god, that stream was great fun, just because it was so much more interesting than my Space Nerds game.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna totally come back to that at some stage. This weekend's looking pretty busy, but if I can make time to play more Stellaris, maybe I'll do it on Friday night. Do some more Stellaris on Friday night and continue that game, because it's a nice mix of empires that hate my guts and empires that like me, and that makes for a much more interesting game in comparison to what I had before, which was everybody just being like, dude, we don't care about you. You turned up when we already made friends. So
yeah.
You're like 3 hours late to the party.
It's funny, like you say you were streaming for 6 hours, and that doesn't seem like a whole lot for 6 hours, but knowing Stellaris like I know Stellaris, that's a lot of activity for 6 hours. So
that was me playing on high speed the whole time.
Oh, wow.
And not pausing as often as possible. The only time I paused was to read out any sort of world events going on. So that's basically how I play Stellaris, because if you play on any speed other than the highest, it just drags on.
Yeah, I agree. Especially for the purposes of a stream, I think that's the only way to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. All right, well, let's barrel on ourselves at high speed and jump into some news.
Now it's time to hear some gaming news. Time for some gaming news.
Cool. So, yeah. Speaking of all sorts of space nerdy goodness, we have I don't know if we can call Sigma a space nerd. He's the latest hero to hit Overwatch this week.
He's absolutely a space nerd.
Yeah,
He's the definition of a space nerd.
I think he probably is exactly
astrophysicist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to just think of him as the mad gravity scientist. So, like he's all into gravity and black holes and all sorts of shit. So, yeah, the teaser for him came out earlier this week, and then the videos sort of showing his story elements and and then basically showing off his gameplay and his abilities and that kind of thing. He is, as of now, in the public test realm servers, I think, and people are sort of giving early impressions of him. He seems pretty interesting. He's a tank character, and his powers are all sort of gravity-based, and he seems like a dude that is like literally a mad scientist because he's actually suffered a whole bunch of psychological damage. So the background behind him is that he actually got locked away after being a bit of a nut due to an experiment failing or something like that, and then Talon freed him. So yeah.
I'd recommend for any listeners who have a mild interest in this to watch his character trailer, because it's actually quite scary.
Really good.
Yeah,
It's
like
super good. It's the best like Overwatch lore stuff I've seen in a while.
It's disturbing as shit. Like I was watching it, I was like,
Yeah.
this is super creepy. Like kids would probably be freaked out by this. Like,
Yeah.
It's not the standard
I really
cinematic they
liked
do
it.
either. It's more of the sort of comic
book
style one.
Yeah, graphic novel style one. Yeah, it was a creepy intro. I was like, this is freaking me out a bit.
Yeah, they do those character kind of comic booky ones every now and then, but they're usually also followed by like a more rendered kind of trailer.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we're getting that.
I get the impression they've pulled back a lot on the Pixar style animated shorts.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a shame because everyone loves those, but they're effectively doing those across multiple game franchises now because they've started doing them for Hearthstone, and you got to assume they're doing stuff for Diablo in the background as well. So
I think people went cool on those a little bit when they started to realize that they're not going to they weren't pushing the lore forward or they weren't giving you that much more information. They were just flashy, and there's a bit of a shame.
Actually, around the time they stopped doing it for Overwatch, they started doing it for World of Warcraft. Thinking about it.
Yeah, that was timed
because-
with the major release of the expansion, though, wasn't it? I guess they've had each major subsequent update has had one, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and they're actually really fucking good.
Yeah.
Like some of the ones that have come out just recently, like I'm watching them, and you know, I'm not playing World of Warcraft at the moment, but I still care about the lore. And so I watch these rendered trailers, and they're just awesome. Like it's really nostalgic at the moment.
Yeah.
So the most important thing about this new character,
I think I know what you're going to say. Go on.
yeah. The most important news, groundbreaking news, in fact, is
Literally
how much people hate his feet.
Yeah.
So
he doesn't wear shoes.
I just don't get that he's wearing gloves and he's not wearing fucking shoes. What the hell is with that?
It's
I've got a
amazing.
theory.
I have a theory too, but you go first.
I was going to say there's actually this rather like surprisingly large Facebook community called the Barefoot Legal Crowd.
Oh God!
and they believe vehemently that they're entitled by like human rights to go barefoot anywhere in the world. And so they feel like they're this persecuted minority because they are.
Oh my God!
Because they want to go barefoot, you know, everywhere. And
I agree.
sometimes they're told, you know, you have to wear shoes to go here. And so I reckon that Sigma is one of the Barefoot Legal Crowd. That's my theory.
I theorize something that might be a little more plausible, but I think he's obviously like an insane character. And to me, his silhouette when he's often shown floating in the air, and his arms are sort of close to his body, and his feet are hanging because he's suspended in the air. And to me, it looks like he's a mental patient. It looks like he's he looks like he's in a straitjacket with bare feet. So for me, I think it's a deliberate choice in his character design. Well, obviously, it's a deliberate choice, but I think it's like a silhouette
supposed to
design.
evoke that
Yeah, I
kind
think
of
it's meant to
feeling.
evoke like a straitjacket style sort of character, because it is crazy that this fully armored like battle guy would like have bare feet like on a battlefield. Like that is insane.
He's a boomer hippie on Facebook going on about legal bare feet.
Yeah, well, I know which one is more realistic, I think. So,
Why not both?
I have a different theory. Mine's more mechanics based. Like I think that they've deliberately chosen to give him bare feet because he's looking like a very, very tough, tanky character. So they actually had to make him weak in some respects. So his secret enemy is Lego. So
God.
And he's also got a second secret ultimate, which is actually Tinia. So that's my theory anyway.
Tinia
sounds like an Omnic name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but anyway,
there'll be a skin where
abilities-
Genji throws Lego instead of ninja stars.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be
Actually,
sweetness.
no, hang on. The Ninja Stars would probably do better in that instance, but sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, he throws gravitic. How do you pronounce that? I'm going to say gravitic.
Gravitic.
Yeah. Two weird little charge thingies, which implodes, just doing damage in an area. They're kind of like a very small AoE sort of, thrown shot. He's got like a barrier that he throws ahead of him, similar to what Symmetro has been able to do. He can stop incoming projectiles in midair and convert them into shield energy, which is kind of cool. So that's one of his defensive abilities, which I'm assuming is like a limited time thing, so he can kind of protect himself and buff himself at the same time while he's absorbing it. But the things that are really attracting people's attention is he's got this sort of ability called accretion, which is basically he gathers a whole bunch of debris around him and flings it at an enemy, which knocks them down. And combined with that, he's also got an ultimate, which is like a gravitic flux, where he basically throws everybody up in the air in an area around him and then back down to ground again. So the thing that's getting talked about a lot is he's a really good combo character because a couple of his abilities effectively knock down or pin things in place so that others can come in, like Farah's rocket sort of barrage and things like that to really capitalize on the lockdown abilities he's got. So yeah, sounds like fun. He's early reports is that he's quite powerful, so I wouldn't be surprised if following the trajectory of a lot of new characters, he gets a little bit of a decrease in power with a couple of balance passes, but we will see. We will see. But yeah, legal bare feet. What the fuck? Anyway,
I'm going to tag you all in so many Barefoot legal posts after this.
I'm going to block you.
Yeah,
Christian, please. I can only be so aroused at any given time.
Christian, if that's what gets you off, man, I think you really need to do some soul searching, personally. But
oh my god!
Moving on. In other Overwatch news, Overwatch is actually getting a new role queue system for ranked and pro play. Now, I think this is quite interesting and raised a couple of questions about what they're doing here. Now, the reason why this came about is because in the Overwatch League in particular, there's been a bit of a stagnation in competitive play because a lot of teams have been adopting a very similar composition for their squads, where they've taken 3 support heroes and 3 tank heroes. And for anyone who is sort of new to Overwatch, typically there's 3 categories of heroes in Overwatch. You've got your tanks, you've got your damage heroes, and you've got your support heroes. So it's your classic sort of DPS, tank, and healer kind of roles. But in Overwatch, because there hasn't been any massive restriction on those types, apart from teams just trying to have a bit of a spread of their composition, these 3 tank and 3 sort of support hero squads, one in particular that consists of, and let's see if I can get this right, it was Reinhardt, it was Diva, it was Brigitte, and then on the support side it had Lucio, and I'm forgetting the other 2, Moira, forget the last one, but
Mercy?
So, what was that, sorry? Mercy?
Zenyatta, maybe?
Might have been Mercy. It wasn't Zenyatta. But anyway, this particular makeup of squad, like those 6 heroes, was starting to pop up irregularly at competitive levels, and it was sort of deemed to be almost like the unbreakable sort of selection of 6, where if you came up against that, pretty much like the only way to have a good sort of advantage against that particular composition was to run the same comp, which, makes for some pretty uninteresting matches. So, but anyway, so Blizzard's turned around and gone, okay, we need to shake things up a bit, not just for the sake of Overwatch League and that level of competitive play, but for general rank play as well. And they're implementing this new sort of system where players can actually only play 2, 2, and 2. So squads actually have to have 2 damage, 2 tank, and 2 support heroes per side. And the way they're doing it is really interesting. So you actually queue into one of those roles, and then because Overwatch is a game that actually allows you to change characters mid-game, what you're only going to be able to do is to change character within that role. So if you queue into a match as like a damage character, throughout that match, if you change character, you can only change to another damage character, and so on and so forth for the other classes. So it's really interesting. It kind of breaks what Overwatch has been up until now to a certain extent, but I actually don't think it's that bad an idea because it still encourages a fair bit of flexibility in tactical play. So, but the thing that really confused me is I don't understand how it's going to work with the team up system in the game already. Because if you have like a group of friends and you form like a team of, say, I mean, we very rarely with our friends get on with the full 6. Like occasionally we might have, say, 4 of us and we team up as a group of 4 and then have 2 randoms assigned to our team for quick play matches and that sort of thing. So my question is, how does it work in that instance? Like, do you select your role at the point that you join the team? Do you select when your team queues into a game? What happens if multiple team members sort of select the same roles? Is it going to split you off and instant you sue with other teams that actually need those roles? There's a big question mark around how this actually works with that combo in place. So I'm very curious to see how it plays out. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of for it. Like, despite the limitations, I think it's actually a good thing. It's a necessary change to kind of get some more interesting games happening? What do you guys think about that?
I think Overwatch is old news.
Yeah, well, there's always
Yeah,
that too.
and like
Yeah.
this sounds like it is good for Overwatch. I'm glad they are doing this, and I think it will improve the competitive scene for people who actually care about that. But me, like, I don't know. Me personally, it's not like it's going to bring me back. It's for those people who are still playing Overwatch. That's not me. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I would be very curious to see how League of Legends handles stuff. Because, like, I've never heard of League of Legends, like, limiting what characters go into a game and everything like that. And what this sounds like to me, like,
They do.
is they do limit?
yeah, you have like draft, pick, and bans. So like each team alternately takes turns picking a hero, and then you can ban certain heroes and stuff. I don't know exactly how it works, but they have a system.
Yeah.
But more to the point, like, they're not limiting it to, like, you can only have 2 of this type of character, right?
Oh, right. Okay, like role bans?
You can't role ban, right? And what it sounds like to me is, like, Overwatch probably needs to work on its balance a little bit, potentially.
Yeah.
That's all they do.
It is
what they
absolutely
do.
what they focus on. But the other big difference, too, is that, like, Overwatch is still a game that only has, like, 20 to 30 characters, whereas League of Legends and your Dota and that kind of thing, you're looking up around 80 plus, 100 plus sort of to choose from. So, yeah, I don't know.
A lot more variety, which kind of creates and detracts from balance in its own way. Yeah, like more to the point, like, I say that Overwatch needs to focus a little bit more on its balance, but what it needs to focus on more is actually creating interesting content, because a single new character is not going to bring anybody back.
Yeah, I agree.
It'll bring a couple of people back that were already interested in coming back to Overwatch, but certainly for me, it's like, wow, that's a cool character. And then I called it a day.
I do agree with that sentiment. And like talking briefly about Sigma's new abilities, when I saw his abilities in play, I was like, okay, so that's like that character, that's like that character, that's like that character. I don't need to try that character because it just, like, any new character, I found a lot of the characters that they brought out recently, they're just compared to existing characters. And if you're no longer playing Overwatch, like you say, there's no reason to go back just because of one character being added to the game.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily for those people, I guess. So I don't know.
What do you think
in a
the
lot of
chances
ways-
of the Overwatch 2 thing actually being real in the next couple of years? Do you think that's going to be...
Totally real.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. I think.
It'll be-
I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I just think it'll be a different kind of game. It'll be called Overwatch 2, but it won't be like a team. It'll still be character driven because
But it won't be a hero shooter. It'll be something
it won't
else.
be a hero shooter. It'll be something else. Yeah.
Well, it'd probably be more like a live service, like Destiny, like loot shooter maybe sort of thing. I don't know. But I definitely think there'll be PvE elements, and that has been a rumor they're going around that they are working on a PvE Overwatch game.
Yeah. If they made an Overwatch PvE game, I'd be all over that shit. Like if it was Destiny style Overwatch, I'd be very much into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like, and I know this isn't true, but it does feel a little bit like they've given up on Overwatch. Like,
Good. They should move on. Like, I just think, like, I think for a game to do one thing really well, that's really good for like a couple of years. But I think it's kind of like with like the 24-hour news cycle and how people consume content now with such widespread access to like information and technology. I mean, this is probably a bigger discussion, but I just feel like games like that can't survive for long enough unless they're a different kind of model. And I think this kind of hero shooter PvP kind of thing will still survive, but I can't imagine it being around long term. Like, and they'll have to shift their focus eventually.
I would agree and disagree. Like, I think that this was the kind of game that could potentially just, die off and they'd move on from it. But at the same time, like, while it's a live service game, Destiny 2 keeps on adding new interesting stuff to keep people playing, right? But the problem with Overwatch is that new characters aren't new interesting stuff. They're just new ways to play the game versus new things to do in the game, right? And certainly, like, where I took a massive break from Overwatch, and then they had the PvE event, and that was tons of fun, and I came back to play it. But they've not really done anything that interesting since. That kind of like, hey, we're going to try this thing, we're going to experiment and do interesting stuff. Or even like laid out a plan of this is where we're going to take Overwatch in the coming months, in the same way that Destiny basically says, this is what you can expect from us in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
And having that kind of plan really says to players whether or not they should continue to play and care about the game. And Overwatch just doesn't have that. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why it feels like they've just given up on it.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of what I was saying. I don't disagree.
Yeah, the amount of focus and attention that Blizzard has given the game in the esports scene, I think, has probably given people a lot of confidence that it's not going to be sort of dropped by the wayside and that they're actually going to continue to support it and push it for a while. But I do agree. I think there's a limit to how long that will go.
Yeah.
And they'll probably try and lead that crowd off into whatever the next incarnation of it is. So hopefully it is a PvE with PvE elements that still allow them to do the esports thing. Like, I'd like the best of both worlds, and I think they're capable of it. So.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I don't think they'll do Overwatch 2. I think they'll do Overwatch something, and it'll be
Overwatch
adjacent.
Titan.
Yeah,
Overwatch Titan, yeah.
Like, Overwatch, the game right now, the hero shooter, will continue to exist, right?
Yeah.
And they will continue to support that because loot boxes are good. So
Surprise mechanics. Yeah.
And they've already built a world, so they can use the existing Earth of the Overwatch world, turn that into a PvE Destiny style shooter, and they've got cash in the bank. Like, they will
100%.
Yeah, they will just rake it in, and everyone will play it. I'll play it. I'd fucking love it. So,
I'd play it.
Yeah.
You guys, do you all have Switches?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Have you ever had Joy-Con drift where your Joy-Con is like the reception is off center and it drifts to the side?
My first Switch, when I first bought the Switch and I had Breath of the Wild, Link kept running off of cliffs and dying, and it took me hours to realize that it was like a hardware problem. It was very frustrating at first. But mine was unplayable when I first bought it.
Yeah, it has been a problem since the Switch launched, particularly with the left Joy-Con, and now finally a law firm is filing a class action lawsuit against Nintendo related to the malfunctioning Joy-Con controllers. They've had over 5,500 people sign on to the class action lawsuit. That number, I imagine, would only go up. So they're alleging that Nintendo was selling a known faulty product, and that's obviously not a cool thing to do. And they've been aware of the issue for plenty of time.
Are they still selling it? Are they still selling faulty left Joy-Cons?
People. The issue is never fixed.
I didn't know that.
Considering how many units are out in circulation, I think that'd be an absolute nightmare for them to do a hardware recall of all of that stuff.
Yeah, wow, I didn't
realize.
realize.
It's not just about a hardware recall; it's about fixing it going forward.
Yeah.
They've known about it since like literally launch, and then it hasn't been fixed. That's one of the problems. Is not that it'd be so difficult to do. It's that they should have done it as soon as they found out about it, which was on launch. And there are really, really actually quite easy DIY fixes where you can buy like a $1 kit off the internet and then unscrew your Joy-Con and fix drift. So it's not like it's this mysterious, unknown, like ethereal issue. People know how to fix it quite easily, but Nintendo still haven't done anything about it. And there's a problem there where if you do a DIY fix, it voids your warranty, even though people argue you should have a right to repair things that you own without voiding warranty.
Yeah.
But then, and in response, Nintendo have issued somewhat of a statement, which I think is really a nothing statement. They just said, "We take great pride in creating quality products. We are aware of recent reports that some Joy-Con controllers are not responding correctly. We want our consumers to have fun with the Nintendo Switch, and if anything falls short, we encourage them to visit our website." And so it's basically just pointing customers to the website, which is the most generic like support response.
Recent reports as well. Like, seems like they're a little bit more long running than just recent. Yeah.
And you can send your Joy-Con to Nintendo to get repaired, but that you do have to pay postage on that, I believe. And it's just not a very not a very satisfactory response, considering.
So the important question is, how does this law firm feel about Barefoot?
Yeah, they're strong Barefoot legal advocates.
Cool.
Yeah, that's definitely related.
Cool.
I actually have an interesting question, which is, I wonder if even though they're attached to the console, if the Switch Lite Joy-Cons could experience drift at all, because they still have a gyro in them.
Don't know. You'd have to send the whole thing back then, not just the Joy-Cons.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether they whether it possibly could or whether it's not. Yeah, I don't know how that all worked, but that'd be interesting because then you couldn't actually get that fixed easily.
Yeah.
There are reports at the moment, though, that I was reading earlier today that Nintendo's apparently going to refund and repair Joy-Cons for free. So if you're getting that drift issue, but I don't know if that's been confirmed yet. That's just reports. So
yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, but we'll see how things progress.
Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, in some bad news, thanks for giving me the bad news, guys. I appreciate
is like 4 weeks in a row you've had the shit.
I know. There's like the guy covering all the game dev side of things always has to talk about bad news. I wonder if that says something about game dev.
Says something about you, I think.
No.
Oh, ouch. There's the bird.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, that's right. Bitch.
So,
Sorry.
So Brisbane-based Defiant Development has shut down. So they're the team that was responsible for doing Hand of Fate and Hand of Fate 2. And Morgan Jaffett was actually a board member of Stirfire while I was working there. And he's been a massive influence on me personally. I use some slides in my teaching where I talk to students about how the perfect project to make is one that has the right team and tools, the right budget, and an audience. And that was a piece of wisdom that was given to me by Morgan. So to see his studio collapse is just really surprising, given the success of Hand of Fate and just how good Defiant development is. So they were working on this game called A World in My Attic, which is basically this tabletop game that comes to life. And the impression that I kind of get, obviously, only the Defiant devs actually know why the studio is closing, but the impression I get is that they've put a lot of work into this tabletop game thing called A World in My Attic, and they've been, they've gone and polished it, done a whole crap ton of awesome work on it, and shipped it around to publishers, and nobody's invested in it. And so that's kind of resulted in them having to shut. So
yeah, I hope a whole bunch of the team find work elsewhere in the industry. It seems like League of Geeks has been pretty aggressive about picking up as many of them as they can, because they've had a whole bunch of job offers going lately. So hopefully they find, because those two studios have a bit of a history of relationship with each other. So definitely a couple of people that have come over from Defiant to League of Geeks, from what I understand. Lizzie Kane being one of them. So yeah, hopefully they can amalgamate together and Voltronize into a more superior Australian studio with their combined might. That would be really cool. But
the only problem with that whole circumstance is the fact that Defiant is Brisbane based and League of Geeks is Melbourne, right?
Of course, yeah. League of Geeks does have a lot of people that work remotely, though, I believe, because they're weird kind of structure of talent. So yeah, I don't know.
Oh, that was certainly how they used to work, but they have a very, very large office, so I don't know if that's still the case. But it'll be interesting to kind of see how it goes. The unfortunate fact is that there's like not even 1,000 full-time game developers, and with Defiant shutting down, that number's just decreased.
Yeah.
So there's not exactly space for those full-time game developers that just lost their jobs to go anywhere in Australia. A lot of them will probably end up moving overseas.
Yep. That sucks. Yep. Okay. Well, anyway, let's move on to our main topic for tonight, and this could be a big one for us, Christian. I think you can jump in and tell us everyone about this one. What's it going to do?
All right. Well, it's a bit awkward of a segue, but speaking of games failing, we're going to talk about a segment called Make or Break, where we're going to change video gaming history. We're going to make one game from the past that did succeed, fail, and then talk about the repercussions. And we're going to make one game that failed, succeed, and talk about the what possible ripples through the space-time continuum that might have had, and how all of the different butterfly effects would have played out in influencing gaming as a whole. So we've each picked one game to succeed and one game to fail, and we're gonna run through them and have a good old chat about our different theories of time shenanigans.
So between the
your
four
games,
of us,
Christian, something has to be done about your games.
Nice.
Nice.
So
I got that reference.
Yes.
Who would like to go first? I'm going to pick Luke.
All right. Damn. All right. No, that's cool. I'll kick off, because I think that some of the others that you guys are going to talk about will, at least in one area, lead on with the conversation a bit. So I want to kick off with the game failure first. So a game that I want to chat about the repercussions were it to actually fail instead of become a success and a pretty big title in the history of the RTS franchise in particular, is the original Command and Conquer. Now, I picked Command and Conquer for a specific reason, and I could have gone with Dune 2 or I could have gone with the OG Warcraft Orcs and Humans, but I didn't. I chose C&C, mostly because around the time of Command and Conquer coming out, much more so than Dune 2, which was also one of the earliest titles by Westwood, and as far as a lot of people are concerned, the first true sort of RTS game that kicked the genre off proper. Command and Conquer was probably the first big commercial success. And it did a few things that really put it on the map. And, it's now spanned a 23 title series. And that's including the Red Alert remaster that we're expecting sometime in the next year, which they announced, I think last year they announced it. So Command & Conquer's been around for quite a while. And even the impact of the subsequent games that have come out, the full, sequels to Command & Conquer, the Red Alert series, Tiberian Sun, everything that's come since, even up to the recent, Command & Conquer Rivals mobile release, which nobody really gave a shit about because it looked terrible. But that's still a lot of games, and it really was the core part of the multiplayer push in the RTS genre. So a lot of people playing competitive RTS games, a lot of that drive came from Command & Conquer becoming big, but also most importantly, it came from the rivalry between Command & Conquer and all of the Warcraft RTS games from pretty much Warcraft 2 Tides of Darkness onwards. So if it wasn't for that rivalry, we probably wouldn't be where we are today with regards to the RTS evolution, and all the way up through other big RTS games. You've got your Total Annihilations, you've got your Dark Reigns, you've got everything that's come since, even to a certain extent the MOBA genre that's really born out of the big RTS push of the 90s. I would say that were Command & Conquer to fail, we wouldn't have had anywhere near the same kind of history with that genre, and we probably wouldn't have had a lot of those titles follow in its footsteps because it probably wouldn't have been as big a thing. So what do you guys think about that?
I have a question that I am wondering. So Command & Conquer came out in 1995 from my Googling.
Yep, correct.
I can see. And Red Alert came out in 1996. So it's only 1 year later. Is there a chance those games were in development concurrently, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that Red Alert certainly, owes a lot of its success to Command & Conquer doing as well as it did. But
because I'm just thinking, like there seems to be a progression, Command & Conquer to Red Alert to maybe StarCraft or something like that in the RTS evolution. But if Red Alert was going to come out anyway, even if Command & Conquer failed, I'm not sure how much that would have changed things.
Just remember, it's Command & Conquer Red Alert. It wasn't just Red Alert. So it very much did rely on the branding of Command & Conquer for a lot of the success that it had because people recognise that brand. So
that's definitely true.
Yeah.
I also do think that because Warcraft had already come out, and I think even Warcraft 2 was the same year.
The original Warcraft was 94. So Tides of Darkness, I think, was either a year or 2 years after.
Yeah, it was 95. Yeah, Warcraft 2 was the same year, and I think that to my mind, like Warcraft would have still been carrying that RTS banner, and then when Age of Empires comes out in 97, that was another huge RTS as well. So I do think that Command & Conquer failing, it definitely would have impacted the trajectory of the genre. But I think that there are two other pillars there in Warcraft and Age of Empires, and then later StarCraft.
Oh, absolutely, and
would have still carried it along.
To be clear, the point I'm making is that a lot of this history is charted due to the rivalry. It's not just one game on its own. It's the fact that both of them existed and were so much against each other at the same time. So you could probably make an equal argument for the Warcraft series. The reason I deliberately didn't is because I think that the ramifications with Warcraft not existing, lead on to other discussions around things that, a couple of you will hit on tonight. So I wanted to leave that alone.
Sure.
But I think one without the other would have a very similar impact, and Command & Conquer as a series had a lot more entries than the Warcraft RTSs. So I think that for that sake alone, you could take a big chunk out of that release list and sort of, chart the impact. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I get that.
All right, well, I'll move on to my success then, and this one's going to be a bit of a different theme. And Christian, I suspect that maybe you're the only one out of the others of you that may identify why I picked this game. So the success I want to talk about is what if Kane and Lynch Dead Men was actually a success, and more of a hit than the mediocre miss that it ended up being. Now.
The first effect is that I would know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Christian, I'll throw to you to see if you know. Do you understand the controversy behind this game?
I don't really know. I know it's an IDOS game, I believe.
Yep, IDOS Interactive. So it's one of the earlier titles. It's a sequel, of course, to the first Kane and Lynch. I think it's the second one. But the reason why I picked this game is it's not actually about the game itself. It's about a particular controversy that was born from the fact that it didn't come out to any great reception. And that is there was a very, very big controversy in the games media side of the industry, particularly with GameSpot back in the early days, where a young Jeff Gersman, who later went on to found Giant Bomb and has become a pretty prominent figure in the games industry to date. He was actually fired, it was revealed later, over a falling out between himself and the upper admin of GameSpot for giving Kane and Lynch.
He wanted to give it a really low score.
He did. He gave it a 6 out of 10, which by the standards back then, anything that is not a 7 or 8 is pretty much it's not a good score. So it's by no means a 3 or a 4, but giving it a 6 is still pretty much like it's dead in the water when it comes out as far as public perception goes of some of the reviewers and what they're giving these things. But the tricky thing is that GameSpot at the time was actually involved in a marketing arrangement with IDOS Interactive, and they had a lot of stuff up on their site, which was Kane and Lynch branding and skins and that kind of stuff. And it created this really, really interesting situation where there was actually a change of the guard with regards to the upper management of GameSpot at the time too, and there was new people coming into those management roles in the business that really didn't have a clue what they were doing. It was revealed later, and these new businessmen that were very much more about the dollar signs of the business than the editorial sort of content. They were getting really angsty at the idea of the publishers pulling ad money over negative coverage of their games. So there was a huge falling out, and after the advertising for this particular game was actually pulled from the site. So you can speculate that there was probably something that went down behind the scenes. And it wasn't until many, many years later that Jeff actually sort of came forward and said what happened from his perspective. And it was literally that he was pulled into a room, and after a few sort of near misses with other coverage that he'd given games that there were potential media ties with, this was the one that kind of broke the straw that broke the camel's back, and he was let go as a result of it. But the thing is, this isn't just about one senior editor sort of losing their job over games coverage. What spawned as a result of this was a huge movement around and I hate to use the term because it's absolutely seeded in the Gamergate stuff of recent years, but it's that old ethics in games journalism kind of debate where people were really starting to pay attention to the fact that there's a huge conflict of interest between these games media outlets like your GameSpots and your IGNs and so on and so forth doing coverage for games when they're actually taking compensation and advertising revenues from the publishers of these titles. So can you actually have people that are providing impartial reviews of this content if you've got that monetary arrangement with them? And it was a bit of a revolution in the industry. It got a lot of press. It actually had a front page Penny Arcade comic on it as well. And for the 10 years since then, since that mess, because I think it's been 11 years now, actually, this has been a very sort of long-running ripple effect of the impact of that kind of conflict of interest in the industry. So, and of course, as a result, a huge amount of the talent left GameSpot around that era. And they've gone on to bigger and better things, and some of them are quite prominent names and figures in the media scene today as far as the games industry goes. Giant Bomb wouldn't exist as it does today without that event having occurred. And ironically, like many, many years later, Whiskey Media, which actually owned GameSpot, sold it on to CBS Interactive, who owns CNET and also GameSpot. So they ended up back part of the same conglomeration of companies again. So, but there was a legal sort of cool down in Jeff's contract where he couldn't actually talk about the fallout of what happened for many, many years, and that finally caught off a few years back, and he was able to talk about it. And man, what a story! So. Yeah, it's kind of not about the game. It's about everything that resulted as as that. But I think it's been pretty impactful. So
I think it's worth saying too, like you mentioned Gamergate briefly, but like there's nothing wrong with talking about ethics in games journalism.
Absolutely.
The whole thing with Gamergate is that it wasn't about that, and they were saying it was. But there should be ethics in games journalism, and this was definitely a huge moment, like a flashpoint in that discussion. And I know. For example, I know that both Kotaku and IGN have their marketing and games editorial staff completely partitioned from one another. So they actually have they both have policies where there's like no crossover between those staff, and the game's writing staff will have no idea even what ads are running on the site.
Yep.
They it's completely kept separate from them to try and avoid these sorts of conflicts of interest, which is something that wouldn't have been happening before
sites
this
live
event.
Or die by their reputation when it comes to this kind of stuff, and like it's kind of sad that it took this for it to actually happen. And you could argue that if it wasn't this game and if it wasn't Jeff Gerstmann, it could have been somebody else in another title and another instance of this kind of thing happening. But it wasn't. It was this. And, you have to wonder what it would have happened if it hadn't have been this game. If this game had have actually come out and been successful, what actually would have happened instead. So, yeah.
It was the most high-profile one. That is definitely for sure.
So yeah, that's my my potential success. Well, how would that actually change the industry? I think that's a super interesting one personally. So...
Yeah, that one's harder for me to actually map out in my brain how it would have changed things, but it definitely would have. Like it would have influenced games media, but I can't see the dominoes in my brain.
Yeah. Oh, it's a big question mark for sure. Yeah.
I'll take the next one then. I'll jump in. So I am going to start with my game Failure, and it's the same genre as you, Luke, but I'm going for Warcraft 3.
Yeah.
So Warcraft 3 came a little later. It came around in 2002, and one of the main reasons that I wanted to discuss Warcraft 3 failing is because of the knock-on effects it would have had in generating other genres, in particular MOBAs, and how Defense of the Ancients, the original mod that spawned Dota and then Dota 2, was a Warcraft 3 mod. It was loosely based on an actual StarCraft mod, but that one had nowhere near the same traction and wasn't quite the same structure as Defense of the Ancients was. And so I think that if Warcraft 3 had failed, there wouldn't have been that community of modders behind it, creating things like Defense of the Ancients. That would lead to no Dota, no League, no Heroes of the Storm, Smite. You also wouldn't have auto chess, which has cropped up now. I also would argue that it would have impacted the trajectory of other hero-based games, like hero shooters, like Overwatch.
Okay.
Because I think that the idea of a game where it's a team game where you each have an individual hero who has a set of cooldown abilities, like Overwatch. I think that is heavily modeled on MOBA. And so I think that we might be in a world without Overwatch. And without Battleborn, even though we're now in a world without Battleborn anyway.
Yeah.
So I think. Well, do you guys agree with that premise so far?
Mm-hmm. I agree with most of it. I don't know about the hero shooter link though, because I think that enough of that kind of thing existed in other games that it probably could have still survived. So, the concept of a lot of fantasy games where you've got these set archetypes, like it's almost like your D&D archetypes. You've got, in a team makeup, you might have like a wizard character and a fighter and a rogue and that kind of thing. Like those classic sort of, fantasy, character personas. I think that kind of stuff is also a big inspiration for hero-based and class-based games. It might have more modern links to, say, the MOBA genre, but I think the MOBA genre kind of draws a lot of that from those style of role-based games anyway. So it's kind of like
I disagree. I think
it's the competitive team-based multiplayer side of things in particular. Because, I think you definitely would still have games where you play an individual character that has a set of abilities.
Class,
like going back to things like Gauntlet or things, or I think MMOs would exist. I will mention that I think World of Warcraft would still totally exist, because I did check and they were developed concurrently.
Oh, okay.
So World of Warcraft would have still come out, and I think would have still been a huge success, even if Warcraft 3 had failed.
So maybe it would have impacted more of the story trajectory after the initial WoW release, with things like Wrath of the Lich King and things like that. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. It would have changed the further directory of the Warcraft brand, but I still think WoW would have been a big deal.
I think the hero shooter DNA is intrinsically linked with MOBAs.
I think it is too.
I mean, it's impossible for me to say, because we're dealing in hypotheticals, that hero shooters would never have evolved without MOBAs, because there are still class-based shooters. But I think if we didn't have MOBAs with such a focus on individual heroes, not just from a gaming perspective, but from a narrative and character-driven perspective, I think that's the main element that feeds into hero shooters. I think the class-based system is more of like a gaming mechanic that I think you're right, Luke, still would have existed, but I don't think it would have spawned hero shooters specifically.
I guess the big difference is balance. So, when you're doing it in a multiplayer competitive format, those characters have to be balanced. It's not that one character can be good at one thing to the exclusion of something else, and another character can be good at another thing. You can't have a situation where one competitively is always the go-to because of the basic nature of that build. You have to have some sort of mix where you can play as any of them, and competitively that variety is what makes the game appealing, but also doesn't break it at the same time. So,
sure.
Yeah.
I think that hero shooters might have existed because MMOs would still, in my mind, exist in their current form, and that has that same DNA in it of controlling a single character with a range of abilities that are on cooldown. I can see how that bridge could have been crossed by from a different direction, reaching a similar conclusion to hero shooters, but coming more from MMO than MOBA. It would have looked slightly differently, but I think that there could have been another bridge to the same place.
Yeah.
I also wonder what would have happened in the RTS space, because I think around the early 2000s was when RTS started to dip in popularity. So I think the 90s was a huge time with Command & Conquer and StarCraft and Warcraft and Age of Empires and everything. I think it started to dip, and then there hasn't really been much action in the genre on a huge level since, with the exception of like StarCraft 2, but even that failed to meet expectations in some way. So I wonder what would have happened to RTS. And one thing I know I jotted down is maybe the Dawn of War series might have continued and been more popular, because that Dawn of War came out in 2004, so just a couple of years after Warcraft 3. If it had come out in a world where Warcraft 3 wasn't popular, there might have been more attention poured onto Dawn of War, and that could have become a bigger thing.
I agree with that, yeah. Dawn of War 2, kick-ass game. Like, really, really good game. Dawn of War 3, definitely not. Yeah.
So my success is a game called Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness from 2003. Tomb Raider itself was obviously a huge hit in the 90s, and it was being developed by Core Design under Eidos as the publisher. And they had hit after hit until the early 2000s, when things started to go downhill a little bit, and Angel of Darkness in 2003 was the death knell for the Core Design-led Tomb Raider series. And after the mediocre reception of that game, it was planned to be a trilogy. They scrapped those plans. They put the franchise on cooldown for a couple of years before Eidos handed it over to Crystal Dynamics. Crystal Dynamics then made like Tomb Raider Legend, and a couple of other Tomb Raider. There was like a mid-2000s Tomb Raider reboot, and then that was middling, but then they, of course, later made Tomb Raider 2013, and that's become a bigger deal. It had since switched to Square Enix as the publisher, because Eidos was purchased by Square Enix. But so let's imagine a world where Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness succeeded. Now, I think one of the big things that would have happened is that Amy Hennig, who was working for Crystal Dynamics, would not have departed Crystal Dynamics and joined Uncharted. Now, I have a quote here that says, publisher Eidos Interactive assigned series creators Crystal Dynamics to the Tomb Raider franchise before Legacy of Kain Defiance shipped. And writer-director Amy Hennig, unable to proceed with Legacy of Kain or lead the new Tomb Raider game, departed to join Naughty Dog. So Tomb Raider wouldn't have been given to Crystal Dynamics because if it had succeeded under core design, they would have kept it and they would have kept producing games. So Amy Hennig then would have continued to be able to make her Legacy of Kain series or perhaps something else, but she wouldn't have left and wouldn't have joined Naughty Dog. Therefore, you get no Uncharted because she was definitely the lead writer and the brain juice behind the Uncharted series. Even besides that, if Tomb Raider had continued to be a huge hit through the mid-2000s, Naughty Dog and Amy Hennig might not have even felt that they wanted to compete in that same space with a pulp action game if Tomb Raider was still so big. But she wouldn't have been there. And then I think that could have knock-on effects with the leaps we've seen in cinematic games, because I think Uncharted was a huge driver of that more cinematic, like big action set piece adventure game.
Yeah.
And I think things like God of War and obviously Last of Us at the same studio, Horizon Zero Dawn, that kind of influence, I think inevitably we would have seen similar things happening as a result of technology progressing, but it would have been different, and it may not have been as quick, or it may not have been as professional or respectable if Uncharted hadn't sort of blazed that trail.
Yeah.
I think we would have gotten there eventually with the cinematic sort of tie-ins to those sorts of games, because it seems very natural that, with, as you say, with the technology that would be embraced sooner or later. But yeah, the timing's an interesting question. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I think it would have been like, that's the whole thing with Uncharted not existing and Amy Hennig not leaving Crystal Dynamics. That's what drew me to choosing Angel of Darkness, because I think that's a really interesting concept to play around with. And, I haven't played any of the Legacy of Kain games, but I know that they had quite a following, and it would have been interesting to see that series continue if Crystal Dynamics had continued working on it.
I think there's a pretty good chance that we still would have hit Tomb Raider fatigue at some point, not that long after that, though.
Yeah. But I guess, like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, if Angel of Darkness succeeded, that would have to mean that the reasons it failed didn't exist, which was Tomb Raider fatigue and Tomb Raider getting away from tombs and dungeons and into more sort of matrixy city-based action, which is what was happening in the series. True. So if people in this imaginary world were into that and they loved that it was doing that, then, you know, it's all hypothetical, but then it could have continued because that's what people apparently like in this alternate universe. The other thing I wanted to mention too was that if Tomb Raider had continued to be a huge success through the 2000s, then Eidos itself might not have been purchased by Square Enix, because that was a huge bidding war between a number of different competing companies who was going to pick up Eidos, and Square Enix came out on top of like a bidding war. But if their value was a lot higher, Square Enix might not have been able to do that, and that means no Square Enix Europe, because that was created by folding in Eidos's European studios, and it means no Eidos Interactive, which puts into question a whole host of games, including Kane and Lynch, and Just Cause and Deus Ex, and a bunch of other franchises that might not have existed if Square Enix hadn't bought Eidos. So
that's some serious butterflies.
Yeah. I really wanted to get into the butterflies in this one. And my final butterfly is a beautiful little franchise that may have flourished under a healthy Eidos called Gex, the Gecko.
Oh my god. I am so down for this butterfly now.
We might be in a world where an invigorated Eidos is pumping out fantastic next generation Gex the Gecko games. So yeah, that would
be in a world where Gex is in Smash.
Oh, yes, holy shit.
Gex for Smash.
Oh man.
Awesome.
Anyway, that was my long train of butterfly thoughts. So
I might bring mine down to a very short train of thought, because I don't have the brain power to think too far ahead, I think. But so my two choices were for a game that I would like to have succeeded or should have succeeded is Mighty Number 9. And my failure is Final Fantasy. So we'll talk about Mighty Number 9 first.
The original Final Fantasy?
The original Final Fantasy, yeah. So actually, let's talk about Final Fantasy first, because it's interesting, because there's a lot of sort of online, what's the right word, like mythos around the original Final Fantasy and what it did and didn't do for Square, and sort of the effect it had. So a lot of the sort of anecdotal, sort of clickbaity articles you read are that the game was produced as a last-ditch effort by Square to save their studio, and that the game was called Final Fantasy to represent that it was their final game. The truth, as always, is a little bit from sort of both ends, where it turns out that the game was the last-ditch effort of its original creator. His name is
Hironobu Sakaguchi.
There you go, Hironobu that guy. It's funny because I'm studying Japanese next year, and I can't even say that guy's name. Sakaguchi. So it turns out it was actually his last-ditch effort at developing a game. So it wasn't the studio's effort in a sense. It was the effort of one man before he would decide to go back to university and pursue a different career. So that part has some truth in it. What is totally untrue is the name of the game, and that Final Fantasy was in fact chosen to be the studio's last-ditch effort. The actual real reason for the game being called Final Fantasy is because it had FF in the title, which in the Japanese language is like a desirable phonetic sound. And in fact, FF could have been anything, and Final Fantasy is just what they ended up settling on. So they originally were going to call it Fighting Fantasy instead of Final Fantasy. So that's a bit interesting as well. So as always, the truth is a little more less exciting than what it's set out to be. But I think Final Fantasy is an interesting one because, and this is purely of my own opinion. I don't know how much of this is factual, but I would maintain that many modern day RPGs, and certainly the JRPG franchises that exist in abundance, may not be where they are today without the success of Final Fantasy. And of course, although the game wasn't developed as a last-ditch attempt, it did save the studio, so that it did pull them drastically out of the red and back into being a successful studio. And of course, they went on to develop so many successful titles, not including the Final Fantasy titles themselves. So, I mean, do you guys think that Final Fantasy can be attributed to a lot of the JRPG sort of and RPG genre success?
I think Western audiences would consider it so, for sure.
Yeah,
that was going to be my take on it. Was that because Dragon Quest already existed before Final Fantasy, and that's been a franchise that was always huge in Japan, and the West totally didn't kind of latch onto, mostly because they weren't localized here. So I think that in Japan, JRPGs would have still flourished, but they might not have come west in such a fashion. Certainly not as quickly and in the same form. So it definitely would have had a huge impact on the Western market.
I 100% agree. What makes me wonder, as far as the Western audience goes, though, is whether something would have taken its place. Because it seems like there might have still been an appetite there for that kind of game, and if Final Fantasy wasn't going to scratch that itch, then maybe something else might have risen up to do that.
It may have done. I mean, for me, when I think of Final Fantasy, it still adheres to sort of the Dungeons and Dragons kind of archetype, that whole class-based system of characters fighting monsters. I mean, how far back do you have to go before we're just talking about a D&D style pen and paper game? It's if it wasn't Final Fantasy, it probably would have been some Western version of an RPG that grabbed people's attentions anyway. So for me, when I think of RPG games, and like most people, it always just comes back to pen and paper, and that existed in the West. So you could theorize that something would have filled that niche anyway.
It might. Sorry, go Matt.
I was going to say, the West would not have changed, because most of those games, like if we're talking about would BioWare games exist without Final Fantasy? Yeah. Because BioWare games were more influenced by stuff like Fallout, and Fallout was influenced by tabletop role-playing systems. And those would have existed with or without Final Fantasy. But certainly Japanese role-playing games in the West, totally different.
Sure, yeah. So, talking about the game that I would have liked to have succeeded, Mighty Number 9. So, for those unfamiliar, one of the original artists, and perhaps people might say the original artist on the Mega Man franchise is Keiji Inafune, left Capcom and decided to create his own video game that borrowed heavily in kind of style from Mega Man. So Mega Man being one of the great original platformers on the NES and pumping out several sequels throughout the years, people have always been excited and always enjoyed Mega Man sequels. And it stands to reason that there aren't many other games that borrow that DNA of the old sort of tough as nails platformer, well-designed levels with, plenty of environmental hazards, and then like a boss style level system where you pick a level based on a boss and then complete those levels. So Mighty Number 9 was pegged to be a real success, and it has a bit of an interesting sort of history where it was a crowdfunded game which smashed its target because everyone loves Mega Man. People were absolutely on board to see a Mega Man clone or something of that nature, and with Keiji Inafune's name attached to it, people were convinced it was going to be a success. And especially with some of the early art that was put out and some of the promise of gameplay, I remember being excited and going along for the ride with it too. It also kind of filled a niche in that between Mega Man 10, which was released in March of 2010, and the most recent Mega Man 11, which was released 8 years later in October of 2018. Mighty Number 9 is the only game to sort of come out in between those two times that would have kind of satiated Mega Man fans. So it's well known that Mega Man games, sort of people have been clamoring them for a long time, saying, Capcom, give us Mega Man, give us Mega Man. And that 8-year gap is sort of a testament to sort of I think how successful Mighty Number 9 could have been had it done its job properly and given people what they wanted in between that time. Because there were people chomping at the bit to play Mega Man, and had it done well, it could have snatched up all those Mega Man fans in between Mega Man 10 and Mega Man 11 coming out. So I think it had the potential there to be a real success, but it wasn't.
I actually wonder what impact it would have had on crowdfunded game projects like that. Whether there would have been...
I can tell you.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Matt?
I could tell you. So right now, Kickstarted video games don't even bother. Pretty much, if you're a game developer and you want to kickstart your game, the chances of you getting funded are tiny.
Yeah.
And they're tiny because of failures like Mighty Number 9.
Yep.
So making Mighty Number 9 a success changes the entire atmosphere of Kickstarter. And, because you probably will remember, 2 or 3 years ago, we would constantly see news articles about just games being funded on Kickstarter and breaking records.
Yeah, you think of your Shenmues and your Starter Citizens and things like that.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that Mighty Number 9 being successful would have kept the thing going for a while longer. But then Star Citizen still would have happened.
Yeah.
Right? And Star Citizen is one of the other reasons why Kickstarter is just a really unhealthy platform for game developers to be on. Because understandably, people that want to fund video games are not interested in doing it when they can't guarantee what the output's going to be, especially from those creators that are pitching a high concept or an idea because they've been burned so much. So,
Yep.
There's another little interesting side tangent that would have happened if Mighty Number 9 had succeeded, which is Keiji Inafune controversially ran a second Kickstarter before the release of Mighty Number 9 for a project called Red Ash. And people were saying, why are you making another game when you haven't even made Mighty Number 9 yet? And the campaign for Red Ash actually failed. But then it was announced that a Chinese game company called Fuse was going to finance it anyway. Since that announcement, this was 2015, and there's been no news because basically Keiji Inafune has ran to the mountains and is hiding due to the failure of Mighty Number 9.
Yeah.
So Red Ash basically is dead in the water. It was supposed to be a similar game to Mighty Number 9 with some shared characters, and also an anime was announced alongside it as well, which is also just vanished in the wind.
Gone,
So we would have maybe also seen Red Ash become another successful game series as well.
Did he run into the mountains where a volcano is? I have to know.
No, he ran into the mountains where George R. R. Martin is hiding and not writing Game of Thrones.
The other thing I like about Mighty Number 9 being successful is that melted pizza explosions will be all through the games industry.
What? What does that mean?
It's a joke of the fact that...
I know what it means, but maybe you should explain for our listeners.
Yeah, so in
I'm
Mighty
a
Number
listener
9...
in this instance, I kind of remember it, but I so don't remember the details, so... Yeah.
One of the things that people gave Mighty Number 9 shit about was the fact that the explosion particle effect basically is somebody going into Photoshop and creating a cloud filter, making it red and yellow, and calling it a day. And so it looks like melted pizza. And that's the full extent of their explosion effect, and it just looks like garbage.
Yeah, the game does look terrible. It's been
really bad.
Yeah, it's been panned across every possible form of media for looking awful, which is
I kind of want to play it like on some dark moments where I'm looking through my Steam sort of store. It's in a similar way to sometimes when I blow my nose and I just have to look in the tissue. So yeah. Anyway,
one of the things that sticks with me about Mighty Number 9 as well is the super cringy launch trailer they came out with that had this announcer who was basically just, I can't remember all of the cringe in it, but one of the things that he said is like, "You'll be crying like an anime fan on prom night."
I remember that.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and it's just super cringy, and maybe
awful.
we would live in a world where that sort of thing was standard, and anime fans were being ripped into in every game trailer, which I'm sure there's an audience who would love, but I personally wouldn't appreciate.
Yeah, I think the final thing I'll say, I think I kind of already said it, but the reason I think of Mighty Number 9 specifically as being an interesting one for success is that I can't think of anything else that fits the Mega Man niche apart from Mega Man. Like, I can't think of any other game where people go, "Oh yeah, that's just like Mega Man." And Mighty Number 9 was poised like an eagle to like swoop down and grab that field mouse right at the perfect time in between Mega Man 10 and 11, and it's so interesting that instead that bird just flew straight into a wall and exploded. And yeah, perfect. So yeah, there you go. Those are my two picks.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll go on to mine. So I kind of took a different tact. I will open up by saying I'm a massive fan of alternate history stuff, and people that kind of conceptualize, what if this happened instead of this? And so I've gone down the route of taking two games that are very, very similar and imagining a world where their success and failure is inverted, and they exist at the same time.
Cool.
So I'm going to start off with World of Warcraft, and you can just imagine the world where just World of Warcraft has failed. All right.
That's a massive fucking ripple.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
So World of Warcraft releases, and it just experiences massive mediocre reviews that are worse than what EverQuest 2 gets at the same time. But Blizzard spent $200 million on making this thing. And so after releasing to the public and just having this really like falling flat response, they're going to have to fire staff. The studio is going to be, it doesn't close, but it's definitely reducing in size quite a bit instead of the massive expansion they have after releasing World of Warcraft. I think that StarCraft 2 was like 2010 or something like that, which is like 6 years after World of Warcraft. Instead, you would see StarCraft 2 way earlier, like 2006. Diablo 3, much the same. Would release much, much sooner as well. Like, they seem to go for like a 2 to 3 year cadence between releases. So I could see that being like 2008, 2009.
Wasn't Diablo 2 after WoW? I actually can't remember.
No. I don't think so, maybe. I'm pretty sure Diablo 3 was the one that came after WoW.
Okay.
So in 2007, I could still see Blizzard actually working on Titan, which was their next MMO. Because the fact of the matter is that even though World of Warcraft was unsuccessful, there were going to still be successful people in that industry, right? So obviously, without World of Warcraft, without World of Warcraft, the Activision Blizzard merger doesn't happen, because Blizzard's a much less interesting target for them, right? To go and merge with. And of course, World of Warcraft failing just kind of leads to the West not being as interested in MMOs, but I could still see it taking off like crazy out in the East, in Korea and Japan, right? Like they would be
things like MapleStory.
Yeah, like they would be unchanged, right? I could see EverQuest 2 sticking around a lot longer, and actually being a much more successful game because all those World of Warcraft players that would be disenfranchised would go over there instead.
Might have another bite at the apple with Ultima, perhaps?
Yeah. But the thing I like most about this thing failing is just the ripple-on effects it has outside of the games industry. So, how many of you guys actually remember the corrupted blood incident in World of Warcraft,
totally.
right?
I mean, I didn't play WoW, but I read about what it is.
So there was this event in World of Warcraft where there was a raid that was in vanilla World of Warcraft, where players could go in there and they would get this corrupted blood debuff, which during the raid, it would actually spread to other players. But the thing was, is if you left the raid while you had corrupted blood on and returned to a capital city, you would still have the corrupted blood debuff, and it would spread to other players in the city.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah. And so it became this massive thing where over the course of like a week or two, people were going into the raid just to get the corrupted blood debuff to go into the city and just kill everything in the city just by arriving back into it, right? And this was so fascinating that I'm pretty sure it was either some scientific organization or the World Health Organization requested from Blizzard data about how this stuff spread, to actually use it as a simulation for disease management.
No shit. Okay.
Yeah. So without World of Warcraft being popular, we would know less today about disease spreading.
Maybe in some insignificant way. Yes.
I love this link.
Yeah, but it's not a massive one. That whole research probably wouldn't have made any sort of changes. It might have put us like a few years behind actually being able to simulate that in a lab ourselves. But I love that connection. Certainly in the West, MMOs, as I say, like they would be dramatically less popular. You would have less players of MMOs until all those games over in the East start coming over.
I actually think it's a lot more serious than that. I don't think it's just less players in MMOs. I think there's a lot of studios that don't even attempt an MMO because it's a massive risk.
Yep. I don't think you would get the Old Republic. You certainly wouldn't get that. Like the whole reason that game will have been made was because of the fact that World of Warcraft was successful. And making a whole shit ton of money.
Agree.
And I think that it would certainly like have a bleed down effect on Blizzard just kind of in general, right? Like on the games that they make afterwards and how people kind of thought about them as a company.
I think it's more serious than what you were making out. I think almost everything after StarCraft probably doesn't exist, in my opinion. So
I don't know. Like Warcraft 3 in this universe is still a success, right? Like I don't know how much. Because this is one of the things I was going to bring up when you were talking about Warcraft 3, Christian. Like, if Warcraft 3 fails, doesn't World of Warcraft cease to exist? But then I was sitting here thinking about it, and it's like, they were making those things alongside each other.
Yeah,
surely they had the budget, right? Like, surely they had the budget. And so Warcraft 3's success would still give them some money to run the company. They weren't banking everything on World of Warcraft, right? I hope that was the case, because that's my logic here, right? Like they wouldn't have banked it all on World of Warcraft. They didn't go all in on it.
I think that Blizzard would still have made games, but I don't think they would be as of a juggernaut as they were through that period.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. Yeah. So that's World of Warcraft. Now keep that in mind, because the success that I'm going for is the Matrix Online. So this exists in the same universe where World of Warcraft fails, because I'm pretty sure World of Warcraft needs to fail for the Matrix Online to succeed.
Yeah.
So Matrix Online came out hot on the tails of World of Warcraft. Like this was 2005, right after World of Warcraft had just released. So with World of Warcraft being a massive failure and the Matrix Online now being a success, you know, the Matrix Revolutions had come out. It was fairly okay in terms of like the critical review.
So to be clear, with the Matrix Online being successful, are we also postulating that the second and third Matrix movies were absolute not shit as well?
Hey, my point is that those movies, while they may not have been critically received, they certainly made their money back.
Yeah, okay.
They were financial successes, right? And there was still a fan base for the Matrix Online. And I would say, like, the people that played World of Warcraft weren't Warcraft 3 fans as far as 90% of them go, right? Like, that game existed and helped made World of Warcraft what it was, but you didn't need that game to enjoy World of Warcraft. Like, I could see the Matrix Online being the same in that you didn't need to enjoy all 3 Matrix movies to enjoy the Matrix Online, right?
Definitely fair.
Yeah, that would be the state they would end up in. So it releases to excellent reviews. It gets quickly flooded with players keen on writing their own stories in the Matrix, right? And that's the big thing about the Matrix Online that kind of separated itself out from World of Warcraft. It was focused on the RPG part of the MMORPG, as in like tabletop RPG, because game masters in the Matrix Online were true to their name in comparison to World of Warcraft, where it was like your Dungeons and Dragons game master, actual people running around in the game world pretending to be NPCs and role-playing with you, and then stories being able to just deviate off into wild directions because of it, right? Yeah. So suddenly, being a tabletop GM is a desirable item on your resume to actually get into a game studio.
Oh, this is an interesting link. Yeah, okay. Yep.
So while Eastern MMOs focus on those fast action games, right? Instead, the direction Western MMOs go down is to focus on taking the GM from your tabletop game and making MMOs around that experience of being in a group that's kind of guided by somebody at a studio somewhere that is making interesting stories for you and interacting with you. So BioWare in this universe, they decide, well, the Matrix Online is successful, so we're going to make our own MMO, and they try to do the BioWare storytelling in addition to this kind of GM storytelling. And I could totally see that just kind of falling flat because it's not going too much in one way or the other. But what I love about this whole thing I've written is that I've got a Blizzard redemption arc. So Blizzard's quietly been working on Titan this whole time. And they go and release Titan, and they reveal that, you know, codename Titan is a game called Overwatch. And it's an MMORPG where it's all this hero-based shooter thing. Where instead of what Overwatch is in our universe, it's instead this game that you hop in and you create your own custom hero with all their own unique abilities and everything like that. And you have game masters in the game world that are playing the heroes that we know from Overwatch. You're interacting with them. You're choosing sides in terms of being part of Overwatch or part of Talon. And yeah, so I could see the Matrix Online and its success and having that game master role in the game changing how a lot of stuff we do in terms of our games as a service titles. Like, imagine Destiny, but now it's got game masters, right? Where Cade and such are actually role-played characters. I don't know how they do that with voiceover or on console, but I like this kind of universe where that game master role is important.
I think that's really cool, because I remember when like the promise of early MMOs, they did seem to hinge more on that RPG side of things. Like, I'm also thinking of like Star Wars Galaxies, like the original Star Wars MMO, and even it wasn't an MMO, but like Neverwinter Nights had a similar like GM storytelling system.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that promise of it being more of like a living organic world that you can just kind of exist in and things happen, rather than kind of grindy loot based stuff that we get with World of Warcraft and its successors. So that would be really interesting.
I think the games of service model of today would be vastly different if existing at all.
Yeah.
I also, there's another angle to the Matrix Online succeeding that I think would be interesting, which is that Matrix Online was pitched as a canonical sequel to the Matrix Revolutions, and it included exclusively filmed like scenes, like live action scenes with the actors. And if that had been a success, that might have been something that other film studios looked at and went, hey, we should also do these cinematic tie-in video games where we, make canonical sequels that are online games, and we film exclusive scenes. So we might have seen stuff like the Star Wars prequels might have had like a Star Wars exclusive game that had exclusive footage in it from Star Wars or anything like that. So that would have been cool.
It's almost like hot off the news of the last week with the Marvel Phase 4 slate being announced for the MCU, like where there being tie-in shows on the Disney streaming service. You're thinking that maybe instead of them doing supporting shows, they could have done supporting video games that link into the cinematic universe.
Totally.
Yeah.
If Matrix Online had been a huge success, then sure.
Wow. Okay, that's
imagine,
super cool.
Like this would reinvigorate the Matrix as kind of a franchise as well. So you would end out with Matrix movies again, and you could potentially end out with a situation where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is impressive because of the fact that it's all tied together. But imagine if they were still releasing Matrix movies that tied in with the MMO, and it was as long lived as World of Warcraft is.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Sort of changes the face of entertainment as well.
Fucking it does.
Yeah.
I think that gets a lot more people into video gaming as well, as a byproduct. So that becomes a lot more mainstream a lot earlier in the picture. So.
Yeah, because I think like World of Warcraft failing, if it was just World of Warcraft failing and then nothing was successful MMO-wise afterwards, like we would basically be looking at a games industry where there weren't so many gamers. So
yep. Holy shit. All right, well, I think we're going to have to wrap it there, but man, that went some places. that was super interesting. All right. So, I'd be really curious to see what anyone listening thinks about all of that, whether they have any other game suggestions that could have had a huge butterfly effect on the industry and, gaming as a whole over the last, I don't know, how many decades have we just spanned? That's got to be at least 30 years worth of content.
3?
Yeah,
sure.
30, 40 years worth of content. We're talking early 80s for some of that stuff. Holy shit. So, yeah, cool. All right, well, send it into the usual places. So mail@partyloaded.com. Hit us up on Twitter @partyloadedshow, and of course on Facebook. And while we're at it, links to our other stuff. If you want to check us out on YouTube or on Twitch, make sure you follow those through at youtube.com/channelendgame or Twitch, where twitch.tv/partyloaded. So cool. All right. Well, very, very quickly, just before we wrap up, Matt, I am pinning you down to play some Wolfenstein Youngblood this week. You keen? You ready to go?
I have agreed to it.
Ready to rock and roll. All right, so if people listening may not hear this in time, but we'll put it up on the Twitters anyway. We're going to try and organise a stream of that stuff and test out the new game. Talk about some fun, exciting stuff with that. Any final thoughts before next week, Christian, Adrian? More
Gungeon. Into the
Fire Emblem
Gungeon
comes out, so I'll play
What's
that.
that? Sorry, what's coming out?
Fire Emblem.
Oh, of course. Yeah. The 3 houses.
Fire Emblem.
Yep. Nice. Yeah.
I might play some Hand of Fate in memory of Defiant. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's getting to that part of the month where things are actually starting to kick off release-wise again. So, yeah. Cool. All right. Well, anyway, thank you everybody for listening. I know it's been a long one. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. But we'll see you back again for another one of these in 7 days' time. Until then, thanks for listening. We'll see you later. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.